Hello, how are you today? Everything okay? Did you have a good weekend? Excellent. Um, yeah, I hope everything's okay. I hope you managed to get out, have some fun. But we will also continue with our English. Very good. So, today we're starting a new unit. Okay, we're starting Unit 9. It's called Whatever the Weather. Okay. And today we're going to be focusing on a reading exercise. Okay, so first you need to open your book and go to page 92. Okay, so it's the start of Unit 9. All right, it says whatever the weather. And we have this picture of a mushroom with a frog in the rain. Okay, so the idea of this in this lesson is to find a good strategy to do these reading exercises. Okay, we're looking at talking about sort of things in the text and sort of other phrases we can use to describe things that we see in the text. Okay. Anyway, let's have a look. So, all right. So, first of all, let's work through this. Okay. So, just a couple of things to think about. All right. What's the weather like today? Well, it's nice and sunny and warm. What's the weather like in January, April, July, and October in your country? Well, January is normally pretty cold because it's winter. April starts to get a bit warmer. Sometimes there's a bit of sun, but it's quite rainy as well. And July is usually very hot in the middle of summer. October is also quite hot as well. And what's your favorite time of the year? Why? Well, I don't know about you, but for me, favorite time of the year is summer because I enjoy the hot weather. I like going outside. Okay, so the idea of this is to sort of get ideas and sort of follow logical conclusions from things that we see in a text. Okay, stemming from the weather. So let's have a look what it says here. It says thinking logically. Sometimes if the answer isn't immediately clear, it helps to think logically about the information in the text. Okay, it always helps to think logically about information in the text. When you read, you must understand, right, and follow what's being said. Okay, for example, if you read in the text, the weather in the area isn't good, a logical thing to say would be people spend a lot of time indoors here. Right? They spend time inside because the weather isn't good, right? So there's a logical progression. Okay, so this is what we're aiming for. Okay, so after that, so let's have some more practice. So now we have in exercise 2, we've got a sentence, and we have to find a logical sentence that follows on, right? Like a logical conclusion that says here. Okay, so let's have a look at exercise 2. All right, so if it says the sun is shining this morning, okay, the sun is shining this morning, what would be a logical thing, a logical conclusion for this sentence? It's usually warm here in May, right, the month of May, or it's going to be a warm day. Okay, well, if you say the sun is shining this morning, right, it's got nothing to do with the month of May, right, but it does have something to do with the day today, right? So it's going to be a warm day. The sun is shining this morning, it's going to be a warm day. All right, a logical follow-up, logical conclusion. Okay, let's have a look at number 2. It says there was ice on the ground. Yellow, right? There was ice on the ground, right, on the floor. So if there's ice on the ground, what's a logical conclusion? It was difficult to walk without falling over, or it was on the roads and on the grass. Well, if there's ice on the ground, right, on the suelo, there's ice on the ground, then, right, it will be difficult to walk without falling over, right? So that that sentence follows on logically from the first one. There was ice on the ground. It was difficult to walk without falling over. All right. And number 3, a thunderstorm woke me up last night. Right? Tormenta. A thunderstorm woke me up last night. Okay. So what would follow on logically from that? Right? If it woke you up, right? So you were sleeping and you hear the thunderstorm and it woke you up. Okay. What would be a logical conclusion? It was very loud, right? A lot of noise, right? And that's why you woke up, right? There was a thunderstorm. It was very loud. You wake up, okay? All logical progressions. Okay, very good. Okay, so make sure you understand and you have the correct answers. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the texts, okay? We've got 3 texts. Now, with any reading activity, right, it's always a good idea. First thing you do is to read the information very quickly to get a general idea of what it's about, okay? So that's what this next exercise is going to be about. All right, so we've got 3 blog posts here, okay? 3 different blog posts from 3 people, Max, Ian, and Joe, okay? So what you need to do is we need to read those very quickly, okay? Don't read them in detail, just very quickly. And you have to tick these things that they talk about in the text, okay? So if they talk about any of these things, you tick it, all right? So let's have a look. A very hot day in a cold country, a bad snowstorm, foggy weather. Foggy is nublado, a sudden storm, moving ice, thunder and lightning, okay? So let's have a look. Let's have a quick read. All right. So pause the video if you need to. Okay. Read the text very quickly. All right. And we'll tick the things which I mentioned. Okay. All right. Finished? Okay. So let's have a look. So the first thing that mentioned is a bad snowstorm. Where does it talk about a bad snowstorm? Okay. I think here. Do you like snow? Snow covered our car, right? So this is, yeah, about a snowstorm. Okay, so the next thing that they mention, a sudden storm. Now, sudden means de repente, right? Out of nowhere. A sudden storm. Okay. So that would be, so we mentioned here, you see, very quickly, it became windy and dark as clouds covered the sky. Then the storm started, right? So it was very quickly, right? So it's a sudden storm. All right. Next thing it mentions, moving ice. Okay. That's mentioned here with Joe. Okay, if we look here, it says strong winds began to slowly push the ice on the lake towards the village, right? So that's moving ice. Okay, so that mentions that there. And then, yeah, and that's everything. Okay, so that's just practice of reading through very quickly and getting a general idea of what's going on, right? Very good. All right, make sure you have it all correct. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll go on to the exercise. Okay, so what we have to do is, so we have the 3 different people writing the blogs, okay, and we have 7 questions here, and we have just to answer which person that question corresponds to, okay, Max, Ian, or Joe, okay. So let's have a look here what it says here. Optimize your exam. For each question, underline the key idea, then scan the text looking for a similar idea. Okay, scan means, again, to read quickly, okay. Look out for similar words in the question and the text. For example, it was cloudy, right, is the same, right? So another way to say that is the sky was gray, right? So the sky was gray, it was cloudy, both mean the same thing, but they're just said in different ways, Okay, so that's what this is about, recognizing things like this. The answer to the question may be a logical conclusion. For example, if the question is, who spends a lot of time outdoors? A logical statement in the text would be, I'm always at the beach. Okay, so if somebody in the text says, I'm always at the beach, right, that means that they spend a lot of time outdoors. Okay, it's just taking the same information and saying it in a different way. Okay, so let's have a look at the exercise. Okay, now we'll do this one all together, and then in the workbook, I'll leave you to do it on your own. Okay, so let's have a look at the questions. All right, and what we can do is we can highlight the sort of like the key things as well. Okay, so who says, so first question, okay, so it says, who says what happened to the weather was very unusual? Okay, right, sorry, before we start the questions, pause the video, okay, and read, and we'll read all the blog posts in detail. In fact, let's read it together right now. Okay, so we can read and listen, okay, and then we'll answer the questions.
Unit 9, Reading, page 93. Crazy weather.
Max, do you like snow? I do, but sometimes it can cause problems. One morning when I woke up, there was snow. It covered our car and the garden. Because of the snow, we were without electricity, and it was dark and cold in the house. For me, it was an adventure, but my parents were very worried. We couldn't go outside for 3 days. Now that I'm older, I think I would be scared if it happened again.
Ian, if you go sailing often, be careful. One Saturday, it was warm and sunny, so my family decided to go out in our boat. We spent the morning sailing. Then we stopped at a beach to have lunch. But very quickly, it became windy and dark as clouds covered the sky. Then the storm started. It wasn't safe to sail, so we waited in the rain until it finished. We were lucky that we weren't at sea when it happened.
Joe, my village is near a lake, and a few winters ago, something very dangerous happened. Strong winds began to slowly push the ice on the lake towards the village. Nothing could stop it. The ice went into people's houses, covered the roads, and moved their cars. People were afraid, but luckily nobody was hurt. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. If it happens again, I'll film it and put it on YouTube.
Okay. So, did you read and were you able to understand everything? Okay. Remember, if there's any words that you don't understand, okay, you can always look them up on the internet. All right. Anyway, so now let's have a look at the questions, okay, and we'll find where the answers are in the text. All right. So the first question says, who says what happened to the weather was very unusual? Okay. So I'm going to highlight sort of the main idea in this question, okay, which is the weather was very unusual. Okay, unusual. So let's have a look. Who says something like this in the text? Maybe not exactly the same, but something similar. Okay. If you look at Joe here, okay, he has the phrase here. It says, it was the strangest thing I've ever seen. Okay, so if it's something very strange, right? Strange is another way of saying unusual. Okay, so I think the answer to number 1 would be Joe. Okay, let's have a look at number 2 here. I'll circle Joe. So okay, right. So question number 2 says, who got wet during a storm, right? Wet means covered in water, right? Mojado, right? Who got wet during a storm, right? So I'm going to highlight that's the main idea. So, let's have a look. Well, there's one text about a storm in particular, which is Ian. Okay, if we have a look here, right, it says the storm started, right? So we're talking about a storm. And then he says it wasn't safe to sail, so we waited in the rain. Okay, so following the logical progression, right? If it says who got wet during a storm, okay, so here they're talking about a storm, and here it says we waited in the rain. Now, if they waited in the rain, that means they got wet, okay? Logic. So the answer to number 2 must be Ian. Okay. All right, let's continue. Number 3, who had to stay in his house because the weather was bad, right? So the main idea, we're going to say stay in his house. Okay, so who had to stay in his house because the weather was bad? Let's have a look. Okay, so, well, here they're on a boat. Joe says, oh, he doesn't say there's anything about staying in the house. If we look at Max, okay, right, they're talking about the snow, the big snowstorm. And let's have a look what it says here. It says, we couldn't go outside for 3 days. We couldn't go outside for 3 days, right? So that's another way of saying staying at home, right? We can't go outside. We have to stay at home. All right. So that answers our question. Okay. So who had to stay in his house because the weather was bad? That was Max. Okay. He said we couldn't go outside for 3 days. Let's look at the next one. It says who gives advice, right? So consejo, advice about an activity. Who gives advice about an activity? Okay. So let's see. So let's think. Who's talking about activities? Well, the only of these texts where they mention any sort of activities would be here. Okay, and the activity that they're doing is sailing. Okay. Now, if we have a look at the beginning of the text, it says, if you go sailing often, be careful. Right? So if you go sailing, so there's our activity, it says be careful, right? Tener cuidado. That's advice. That's your consejo. All right. So who gives advice about an activity? All right. That would be Ian giving you advice about sailing. Okay. Number 5. Who says it was dark indoors? Dark indoors. Dark, oscuro, okay? And indoors, so inside. Who says it was dark indoors? Okay. So if we look at Max here, okay, it says, right, that Max in his snowstorm says, we were without electricity and it was dark and cold in the house. It was dark and cold in the house. Okay, so he almost basically says the answer there, right? Who says it was dark indoors? Indoors in the house. It's the same thing. Okay, so the answer is number 5 is A, Max. Okay, good. Let's look at the next one. Okay, 2 more. Who describes how the weather came indoors? Who describes how the weather came indoors, right? So came inside. The weather came inside. Strange kind of concept. Let's have a look. Okay. The weather came inside. If we look at Joe, okay, when he's talking about the ice on the lake moving into the village, it says here, the ice went into people's houses. The ice went into people's houses, okay? So the ice, he's talking about the weather, okay? And if it goes into people's houses, right, that means it goes inside, okay? So the answer for number 6 would be C, Joe, okay? All right, and then last one, who was enjoying himself before the bad weather began? Okay, so enjoying himself before, right? So having fun before, the bad weather happened. So, so let's have a look. If we look at Ian, okay, Ian describes quite a bit before the storm, right? Ian is the man who's sailing on the boat, okay. So he says, it was warm and sunny. My family decided to go out in a boat, and we spent the morning sailing. Right? So logically, right, if you spend the morning sailing, right, if you're sailing doing an activity, you're having fun, right? Otherwise, why would you do the activity, right? So who was enjoying himself before the bad weather began? All right, that would be, oh, sorry, no, not that one. Sorry, wrong answer. It would be Ian here. Okay, let's get rid of this. Okay, so this is the idea of how we do this exercise, okay? You highlight the main idea in the question, and then you find a similar idea in the text, okay? Maybe they say almost the same thing. Maybe they say the same thing in a different way. Maybe they say a logical sort of something else that relates logically, okay? So find the same idea in the text, okay, using sort of similar words, right? Phrases that mean the same, but are different, okay? And you find in the text, and then you can get your correct answers, all right? Easy. Now, before you try on your own, all right, we'll just have a look at some of this vocabulary, all right? So I'll get rid of my highlights here. And then we'll look at the words in the text which are highlighted. These are our vocabulary words. Okay. So, covered, worried, clouds, finished, village, lake, dangerous, and ice. Okay, I think you know most of these words. All right, so we can just match them to the definition straight away. All right, so we can do this all together. All right, I think it's fairly easy. So a village, what is a village, right? It's like a small town, all right, in the country, a little village, okay? Finish, you know what finish means, okay? Come to an end. Worried means preocupado, right? You're worried about something, okay? So that would be here, to think and feel unhappy about bad things that could happen, right? You're worried, preocupado. Clouds, right? Nubes. White or gray things in the sky, which are made of water. Covered, right? Isn't it? Covered, which means if something's covered, it means that it's something's on top of it so that it can't be seen. Okay, so for example, right, I'll say my phone. I'll use my shirt. My phone is covered. Right, I've covered the phone with my shirt. Right, covered. Dangerous. We all know what dangerous means. Peligroso. Okay, the opposite of safe. Ice, yellow, okay, water that is below 0 degrees, and a lake, a large area of water, okay? I think the vocabulary you know already, all right? So just a little bit of revision. Make sure you have the correct answers in your book, all right? And, yeah, and we can continue. Okay, very good. So, now what we'll do the same type of exercise except in the workbook, okay? So, so we'll do what we'll do first. Okay, so we have the main exercise here, okay, with 3 different blog posts like before. But first we'll have a look at exercise 1. Now the page in the activity book is page 68 and 69. All right, so find that page, and it's the beginning of unit 9 here, reading. All right, and we're going to do exercise 1. Okay, so have a quick read. So again, first thing, quickly read, right, the text to get the main idea. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll look at these pictures and we'll think of a logical phrase to describe what is going to happen, right? What's going to happen. So let's have a look. Okay. Let's have a look here. So here we have some mountains, a valley, and the clouds are moving in different directions. Okay, so so we said it's going to be a nice day. I don't think it's going to rain. I don't think it's going to rain until tomorrow. All right, so if you read the text, right, the logical answer, right, the clouds here are moving. I think it's going to rain. Let's look at picture number 2, right? Looks like nighttime. And we have the phrase that we can see the moon here. It says it's raining at the moment. So I don't think that's correct. It doesn't look like raining. It isn't going to rain in the morning, or it's going to rain soon. Well, I don't see any clouds in the sky, so well, I guess it's going to rain soon. So yes. If we have a look at this picture, okay, we see birds on a telephone wire. It says, I think there's going to be a storm. There isn't going to be a storm, or it's going to be a fine day. If the birds are sitting on the telephone wire, there's probably going to be a storm. Here we have the cows in the field. All right. They're all eating the grass. So I think it's going to be a nice afternoon. Take your umbrella, it's going to rain, or it's going to be windy. Well, the cows are all eating the grass, and it's probably going to be a nice afternoon. Okay, and here we have water from the rain on the grass here. So it's quite windy, it's going to rain, or it may be a lovely day. Right? If you see the water on the grass here in the morning, it's probably going to be a lovely day. This is called dew, by the way. We call that in English. So yes, okay, so hopefully you got all of those after reading the text. Okay. Anyway, okay, it's just practice about sort of following what's being said and thinking logically about what's happening. Okay, so what I would like you to do now is the main exercise, right? Exercise 2. Okay, we have the 3 different blog posts, okay, and then 7 questions, and you have to choose the correct person for each question, all right? So do this on your own. Now, I want you to do the same thing that we did in the pupils book. So in each question, highlight the main idea, and then find a similar idea in the text to find your answer, okay? Pause the video while you do the exercise. Okay, all finished? Let's have a look at the answers. All right, so I'll just show you the answer straight up. Okay, so number 1 is Lynn, number 2 is Vicky, number 3 is Vicky, number 4 is Vicky, 5 is Amma, 6 is Lynn, and 7 is Amma again. Okay, so those are the answers. Did you get them correct? Yeah, I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did a very good job. Okay, now if you made any mistakes, okay, go back and find the mistake, find the correct answer, right? Find the correct answer in the text for the ones you got wrong. Okay, if you got them all correct, fantastic. All right, but yeah, so that's basically how to do that reading exercise. Okay, anyway, if you finished everything, if you finished all that in the activity book and in the pupils book, then we can finish the class for today. Okay, so very good work. All right, and have a very good day, and I will see you on Wednesday. All right, bye-bye.